Here.
Representative Larson?
He's coming.
Okay. Representative Sherwood? Representative Stiff? He's at a committee meeting, yeah. Representative Walters? Representative Swanitzer?
Here.
Chairman Nicholas?
Here.
Here.
So ladies and gentlemen, just to give everyone a heads up, so whoever's here, we're going to go through about 3/4 of these re-referrals to try to get them out real fast. Then the next up will be the omnibus water bill. The next up will be 102. And we're guessing that we'll be pretty close to the end of our time by then. But just so everyone knows what's on the horizon. But we're definitely going to get to you, so. All right. Re-referrals. First up is Senate File 118.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so this bill was brought, and this has been an ongoing conversation in an effort to determine whether we can transplant bighorn sheep into the Sweetwater Rocks area, and the concern that our livestock producers, particularly our sheep producers, have in that area and the impact it might have on their leases. This is putting $100,000 in there to the, I think, Department of Ag to do this study, and another, no, that's $50,000 for the Department of Ag to do rangeland health assessment, and then to fund for a period of till 2030 a partnership reimbursing game and fish for costs on relocating or removal of bighorn sheep.
Okay, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
Motion do pass.
Motion to pass, roll call.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood? No. Representative Stiff voted aye via absentee. Representative Walters?
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer?
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas?
All right. Next, we have Senate File 19, Developmental Preschool Funding. Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, this bill has had a parallel track with what we've been doing in the budget bill, where in funding the developmental preschools, the Senate side pulled funding out. The House, yesterday, I believe, put in 16 million that correlates with action that we've done in the budget bill, and these are general funds.
Okay, any public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
This familiar face, I can't quite place it.
I've never been in this room before, Mr. Chairman, so it must be a lapse on your part, I'm afraid. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is essentially belts and suspenders. And I like belts and I like suspenders, so I think I would encourage you to approve the amount in the bill, and I stand for any questions.
Questions? Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We have a motion?
Move to pass.
Moved by Representative Larson, seconded by Representative Henderson. Roll call.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood? Aye. Representative Stiff voted aye via absentee. Representative Walters?
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer?
No.
Chairman Nicholas?
All right. Okay, next we have Senate File 41, Banking Division Classification and Salaries. Want to walk us through the bill? I'm good.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I apologize, my laptop or my tablet is completely kaput, so I'm flying a little blind right now, but just going off recollection, the discussion we had during the interim was right now their Division of Banking, with some of these Speedy Bank applications, they're very serious applications that you can't just have an entry-level person processing them, and some of the senior positions, examiners, audit, all that kind of stuff, that there's a real lack of, not lack, but just the folks who had a lot of experience have since left. And I think out of all the senior examiner positions, I have to confirm this to the Division of Banking, but the most experienced one has only about 18 months on the job. And so that's a consideration that we're dealing with. And right now with Again, with some of these speedy banks and some of these other financial institutions we're dealing with, it can take quite a while to process some of these applications. I believe it's right around 9 to 12 months for a speedy bank, and some of these potential applicants hear that and they get a little, it's a bit of a turnoff for them. And so the reality is that these types of folks with this type of experience are not, you can't just pull them right off the street. And when you do find them, to keep them and retain them, we're gonna have to pay them a reasonable salary. We had a bill very similar to this 4 years ago. It was vetoed by the executive branch. There's been some improvement, but I think not enough to help us fill some of those positions at the Division of Banking. I'll obviously leave the minutia to the director here, but that's kind of the context, and it's badly needed. I will notice that right now, obviously, there's a pretty serious lawsuit going on between the Federal Reserve and Custodia Bank. In the event that bank becomes successful, kind of what we're hearing is that a lot of these potential applicants are watching that litigation. If it rules in the favor of the bank, then you'll probably see a big rush of applications, and some of our folks will be overwhelmed and we'll need more positions to process those. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, Mr. Chairman.
Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Western, so the concern 4 years ago when we was doing this is that if we brought all the salaries up, which we have since done, that would alleviate the concern that we've had. What I'm taking from what you're saying is now that we've done all of the employee compensation, this anomaly still exists, and that's what you're trying to rectify. Do I get that? Am I getting that right?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, that is correct. That is correct. There's still a need, an unmet need that in these positions, and so I think this will help give the division the flexibility to pay these folks what's going to be necessary to get them here and to retain them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott Meyer on behalf of the Wyoming Bankers Association. The question really isn't so much about how you grade the pay up, it's how you classify these individuals. Right now, they're classified as auditors. And I'll let the commissioner discuss that a little bit, but in my opinion, what is an auditor going to do? He's going to maybe write you a nasty letter. These folks are not auditors, they're regulators, they're enforcers. They can't take my charter away. They can reissue a cease and desist. And so what we're asking the legislature to do is say, reclassify that. Let us have a classification for regulators, and then we pay them accordingly as determined by appropriations or the governor or what have you. But we need to have this new classification because what we're getting now is not sufficient enough for the role that these folks are playing.
Comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeremiah Bishop. I'm the State Banking Commissioner, head of the Division of Banking. As Representative Weston said, this came up during the interim, basically when I was asked about what would happen if we were to receive a large number of these SPDI applications. Currently, like what was stated before, it's a very slow process right now. I have one full-time staff member that can process, whether it's an SPDI or most commonly trust company applications. So that's what spurred this conversation. And then also over the last few years, one of the questions was, okay, we've done some statewide increases. Where are we right now? So that has helped, I'd say, especially with the number of applicants we're getting on our entry-level positions. However, there's still a pretty big difference between our more senior positions and what the market is. So I provided the fiscal note on this bill. I'll go through just really quickly where I got that and then answer any questions. But we have salary data from Conference of State Bank Supervisors, CSBS. That's every state agency similar to us that supervises banks. On an annual basis, provide a salary data, and then this CSBS puts that together, and then I can get where similar positions, what they're paid in other states. So I took our district and estimated what it would cost to bring each of our positions up just to the average in our district. So that's our geographic region. So we're not comparing, New York or California. This is basically North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, kind of that region. Obviously, the entry-level positions are much closer to market. I think that has helped us, like I said, get more applicants. But at each level, it is significantly bigger difference. So for example, our senior examiner positions, these are the positions that if you are going to make a career working with us, that's where you're going to spend the majority of your time. Ideally, it would take about 3 to 5 years to get that to that position, but then you're going to be working there basically until a management position opens up. Currently, after the last 2 pay increases, those are about $20,000 a year short of what the average is. So that's where the majority of that fiscal note came from. As far as kind of turnover, like I said, since 2019, we have a total of 28 positions. Since 2019, we've had 35 people leave, including top to bottom, from the commissioner all the way down. On our bank side, currently, myself and our deputy, we were the only people who were actually with the agency in 2019. So we do have a pretty significant lack of experience on our bank examiner side, which does pose some problems. A lot of the experience comes from just knowing what happens to banks and other institutions during economic downturns. We don't have that. So right now, we're just kind of having to wait it out and get people trained. Obviously, that takes a long time. Anyway, I don't want to take up a lot of time. I know you're busy, but I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions? Betsy?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Betsy Anderson. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff and General Counsel for Governor Gordon. So I did want to say that the governor does support the spending authority in this bill. I think if we're going to fix this, we'd like to just go ahead and start fixing it. The prior legislation was from 2020. We've definitely made progress since 2020 in different ways, but obviously Select Blockchain didn't think that was enough, and I think we would like to get this wrapped up. I will say that there are some other concerns with this bill, and so that is yet to, I won't say be resolved, but those are issues that maybe should be looked at. But if the bill was to pass, we would rather have the spending authority now so we can go ahead and move forward and resolve this.
Okay, any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Is there a motion on? Move to pass, Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Henderson. Roll call.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson? Representative Sherwood? Representative Stith voted aye via absentee. Representative Walters? Representative Zwanitzer?
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas?
Aye. Next is we're at House Senate File 24, Public Service Commission Integrated Resource Plans. Do we have anyone to present the bill? If not, Mr. Vice Chair.
I think a good chairman down here that voted against sheep.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I can give the body just a quick overview of the positions and financial impacts of this bill. So the Senate amendment added 1 full-time position in the PSC, and the House Standing Committee increased the pay for that position from $20,000 to $356,000.
Please, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I'm Mary Throne, Chairman of the Public Service Commission, and with me is Marcy Norby, our Executive Director. And I apologize, Mr. Chairman, did you say 24? 24. So 23 and 24 are companion bills. 24 gives us greater ability to scrutinize integrated resource plans, which is the long-term planning document that our major utilities use to basically plan their future procurement of power and to estimate demand. It's a highly technical operation. In 2019, we initiated an investigation of our largest utilities, IRP, and spent $295,000 on a contractor just for that one case. So based on that experience, we see this as requiring a more senior analyst, and so then the numbers you have in front of you are for an FIEC 11 position, which is the highest we can go in our structure. And then we have a one-time expenses and computers, that sort of thing, and a modest construction budget to create an office.
just so we can kind of kill two birds with one stone, you said the bills are competing, or are they partners?
They're partners, companions, they're
Companions,
friends, Mr. Chairman.
And if you had a preference of one over the other, do you have a preference?
Mr. Chairman, we did have 3 positions between the 2 bills. I think we believe we still need a position in each bill. But we were, frankly, I was afraid if one of them didn't make it all the way through I debated whether to put 2 positions in one, but I just split the baby.
Go ahead, Mr. Larson.
Mary, so in your budget, you came, and my question is the building out of your facility, so in your budget hearing, we're building out to accommodate a little more, one more person. In this, I mean, do you have the room to expand, is, I guess, my bottom line question.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Chairman Nicholas, Representative Larson, we do have the room, so our rent would not increase. We basically need to bifurcate one larger office into 2.
Go ahead.
So you've got 20,000, I think, here, about 38,000 in the budget bill, total of 58 because we raised rent on that one. Do you need both?
Well, yes, sir. Chairman Nicholas, Representative Larson, we would need both. The one that is actually in our budget is for the Office of Consumer Advocate, and the location is completely different.
Chairman Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Throne, just to make sure I understood correctly, between the 2 bills and the activities related to the 2 bills, you need a total of 2 positions. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, yes.
Okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment on Senate File 24. Move to pass. Roll call.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson? Aye. Representative Sherwood? Aye. Representative Stith voted aye via absentee. Representative Walters? Aye. Representative Swanitzer?
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas?
Aye. Next, we've got Senate File 23, Stone Cold. Okay, any public comment on this bill? I think we've kind of covered it. Any questions for Tamara? Seeing none? Close public comment, roll call. Okay.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson? Aye. Representative Sherwood? Aye. Representative Stith voted aye via absentee. Representative Walters? Aye. Representative Swanitzer?
Aye. Chairman
Nicholas?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Now we'll
Okay, next is Senate File 69. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate File 69 raises the Medicaid reimbursement rate for folks that are in the hospice care up from 50% of what we pay in nursing homes to 100% of what we pay in nursing homes. So it just, while they're in a hospice, we'll be paying the same amount as if they were in a nursing home. And this actually saves money because if they're not in hospice, they're typically in emergency room care, which is far more expensive than hospice care. So ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, any public comment?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Sean Murphy. You're going to hear from me in a little bit about one of the other bills, but my nonprofit is called Compassion, and I've been an advocate for all of the hospice legislation this session. I have been a hospice volunteer for 10 years in the VA, and I have a child, a son with a terminal brain condition. So I'm a big hospice palliative care advocate and supporter, and Some of the talk with this bill is, do we want to have this spending from government? The only people that have voted no against it, one or two members have said, well, we don't believe that's the role of government. But I'm here to tell you as a hospice advocate, this is an incredibly good spend. You're all very good with numbers on this committee. 70 cents of every dollar in healthcare is spent in the last 2 weeks of life to extend it about 2 weeks. And that's because we're afraid of death. We want to delay the inevitable. So we create all of these things in nursing homes to delay the inevitable. And ultimately, hospice saves money. It's quite an interesting thing. And this bill is a very good support for that. We see that our hospices are fading in Wyoming, our facilities, but ultimately we want to die at home. I think everybody can agree if you're going to be in hospice, you want to be at home. But this bill is what helps support our facilities. So I just wanted to be a strong advocate that this is a very good spend. There's been good hearts and good minds that have gone to this legislation, and I do urge your vote to support hospice care and this legislation. Thank you.
Committee, is there a motion on the bill? Move to pass. Second by Representative Sherwood. Roll call. Senator Kolb, if you want to sit down over here, you can just jump in one of the senator's chairs. Thank you. Yeah.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood? Representative Stith voted aye via absentee. Representative Walters?
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer?
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas?
Aye. Okay, we're going to stop on the re-referrals. We've got 3 left. We'll do those on adjournment. Now we're going to go to the water omnibus bill. Welcome.
Thank you,
ahead,
Mr.
please
Chairman. Jason Mead, Director of the Water Development Office. Point you towards the 3-ring binder that we handed out. Inside I think it's the second page, is a blue summary sheet. I'll work from that because I know you guys are short on time here. So once everybody has that in front of them, I'd point you towards about the 3rd column of that blue summary sheet, and then also reference you to the kind of columns 5 through 8. So the 3rd column is really the different sections of the bill. As you look down through that column, you'll see section 1, section 2, so on and so forth. And then columns 5 through 8 are the actual accounts that the funding comes from for a particular project. So in that first section, we've got 2 projects and then also our cloud seeding program. And that's $889,951 out of account 1. And then I also point out the last column for the Bighorn Regional project. That's the first project on that list. We have a funding shortfall through water development this year, so we were only able to recommend, I guess, the pre-construction phase of this particular project. And with that, the Select Water Committee chose to fund the entire project or the construction project portion of that through general fund. So you'll see on that second row of the blue sheet there, there's $1,659,700 of that funding, which would be contingent upon a transfer of general funds to account 1 to cover that. The second group of projects there are our construction projects under account 2. We've got 12 different projects. Again, looking at the last column, there's a number of C note 2s. We have a shortage in account 2. So most of these are contingent upon a transfer from account 1 to account 2 to fund them. And again, we have the same situation. The second to last one in that particular group, Ranchester Transmission Line, we recommended pre-construction dollars. Select Water Committee chose to try to fund that construction portion with general fund dollars. So you'll see that there. That would be contingent upon that transfer. The third group of projects there are construction project amendments, and these would be both in account 1, 2, and 3. We've got quite a few time extensions. We've got the small water projects program that we're looking to add $1 million to. And then there's also a $500,000 general fund request for that particular program. And then we also have 3 projects down near the bottom Owl Creek Irrigation District, Happy Valley. Happy Valley is another project where, again, we funded pre-construction last year. It didn't rise to the priority this year for funding for construction, but that one, along with the Sheridan Northeast project, the Select Water Committee chose to fund those with general funds to the tune of $5,092,450. And then as you work down through those last sections, Section 3 just repeals the sunset date for the small water programs. And then Sections 4, 5, and 6 are effectuating the transfer of funds. So Section 4 would be a transfer of $7 million from account 1 to account 2. Section 5 is the transfer of general funds in the amount of $6,752,150 to account 1 for the projects I mentioned. And then Section 6 is the same for account 2 and from general funds in the amount of $2,196,400. So with that, I would ask if there are any questions. I'm ready.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
you're going to have to call highway patrol and get you for speeding on that one. You did really good. I was trying to, Jason, thank you, and I know that you're conscientious of time. I was trying to, down in that small water projects section, I couldn't see where those projects were at in the bill or in the book.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, in that particular case, we're asking for funds to be appropriated to the small water program, and then the commission and the Select Water Committee accept applications each year. At our March meeting, which is coming up here on the 20th of March with the commission, and this, I believe the Select Water Committee meeting is going to meet this Thursday, they would look at those applications, decide which ones they want to fund. So we're not appropriating projects.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize, and so then that would correlate with, in the bill on page 33 with K?
I believe that's correct.
And you mentioned something about extending or doing away with the sunset on that? And where is that in the bill?
Mr. Chairman, that would be on page 49 of the bill. It originally said a sunset date of July 1st, 2025, I believe, and then that would just remove or repeal those sections for both the small water project programs, account 1, and then the same for account 2, just removing that sunset date altogether.
Can you tell me that again?
What line?
So page 49, right at the bottom, it says section 3 there on line
Yes.
21.
Those, the repealers.
That's right.
In current status is that they would, small water projects would sunset when?
Mr. Chairman, July 1st, 2025. There'd be no new projects accepted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, could I just mind going back? So then on 33, on the bottom of 33, line 20 and 21, does that carry over to through 34 and 35, or does it just end with K?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, it does carry over into page 34 with the project description, the project budget. This is one where we continually add funds to the previous appropriations, so as they're spent down and we have to add more funding. So that's why you'll see, for instance, on page 24, line 8, total project budget, we're adding $1.5 million so that this is a 50% grant program not to exceed $35,000 apiece. So that reflects that. And the grant appropriation and special conditions continue all the way on to page 35 for that particular program.
So can you help me then, Jason, are those the current balances that would, with this appropriation, that would take it up to the current balance? But what, could you tell me, for example, what the current balance, so is that 17,000, there's 17 million that's stricken on line 9? Is that a current balance?
Mr. Chairman, that would be the total that's been appropriated to that program over time since 2014.
So would it be fair to say that adding it in is as much money as it is authority to, so you're increasing the authority to spend as well as add to it?
Mr. Chairman, I suppose you could look at it that way. The majority of that money has already been spent on projects. So we're asking for additional funds because of the applications we've received this year. We think we need about $1.5 million to cover those in account one. So that's why the additional funding under, really, if you look at the additional appropriations, so be line 1 of page 35, and then working your way down through that. So $8,663,000. We are proposing adding $1.5 million to that, so that would take that up to $10,163,000. And then with that, subtracting out what's been spent and the existing balance, we would have about $2.1 million roughly that has been unspent that we could then use to take care of applications we've received this year under Small Water Project Program, account 1.
Thank you.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a reminder, is it common for the Select Water Committee to fund projects with general fund, or do they typically stick to just the water accounts?
Mr. Chairman, I would say typically they would stick to the water accounts. This year, we had roughly $40 to $45 million worth of requests and about $18 million through our accounts to be able to, address those requests. So I think that could have had something to do with it.
Any other questions? Senator Steinmetz, any comments, or please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Serving as chairman of your Select Water Committee. Just a couple of comments. As you will see from the Senate amendment, we deleted $875,000 in cloud seeding, aerial cloud seeding, so we wanted to reallocate those dollars into the small water project funding rather than to do the cloud seeding where we believed it was within the margin of error on that program as to the results we were getting. With the report that came out, the ground-based seeding was yielding more snowpack and more results. And so with that in mind, we felt the other projects were more readily, we saw more of an impact on those than the cloud seeding. So that was one of the issues. And there was another question, I think, Representative Walters, what was your last question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question was how often in the recent past has the committee decided to spend general fund dollars to fund these projects versus the money out of the water accounts, knowing that the water accounts are to fund the water things, and we should stay within our budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Walters. To address that, because the Board of Control has been using funds out of Water One, we have seen a reduction in our projects, and so we were working to replace some of those. And it was the opinion of the Select Water Committee that these projects rose to the elevation of using general funds on these for one-time projects.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to help me understand, are the number of applications and the cost of those projects, those water projects, exceeding the rate at which we're generating funds through the water accounts?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, yes, because of inflationary pressures, we have not seen a adjustment for inflation in these accounts. And so with the number of projects that serve all our municipalities all across the state and our irrigation districts and agricultural uses, we've not seen that adjustment for inflation. We have allocated more money out of the water accounts for those inflationary pressures, and thus the need for some general funds to be infused.
Quick follow-up, Chairman?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So having said that, then would it be fair to say that the primary reason for the increased cost requirements may exceed what it cost, for the control board, or not?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, they may exceed that, but it is also a component of the issues we're facing in the water development accounts.
Further questions? Any other public comment? Anyone like to come up? So I do have a question. In the House version of the budget bill, we added $16 million to essentially recoup the cost of the border control. And so if that provision passes, then you'll have excess of what you're requesting in the general fund budget. Would that be a fair characterization?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, you can see on the summary sheet there, general funds in this particular bill, you're roughly a little less than $9 million of general fund request for this year. And that's.
So this is a one-year request, not a two-year request?
That's right. So when we look at the biennium, we try to split what we have half and half, so we don't know what projects we're going to get next year.
So I'm curious, in terms of your applications that you receive for, let's just use small water projects, do you do them based upon time of submission, or do you have an allocation that you review over time to have a reasonable distribution of those dollars around the state?
Mr. Chairman, as part of our criteria, we have a prioritization kind of breakdown of what projects like new development of water versus an environmental project, for example, that would take precedent. And I think that in account one, I believe we have about 6 different priorities and some similar in account 2. So we really don't look at how it's dispersed throughout the state.
And so is there a way for you to present to us, for example, in the interim, what type of applications are being submitted and where the money goes over the past 10 years, if we can see if there is a significant more number of applications coming from particular parts of the state that might be better at submitting applications versus need versus size of the water projects and the amount of water available around the state? I mean, do you ever do that kind of assessment or analysis?
Mr. Chairman, I think years ago that discussion was brought up, and I don't know that people wanted to look at distribution like that, just because I think we're looking at health and functionality. I don't say that's coming from the office necessarily, but the small water program is really meant for improving the health and functionality of watersheds. So at some point, you're going to get to a tipping point where you are improving those, which can affect, water quality, so on and so forth. So just because maybe one particular sponsor hasn't applied very often doesn't mean we should wait around, I guess, for them to come to the trough and apply, while there can be other projects that can be getting on the ground and improving watershed health in the meantime. So
in the terms of the number of applications that you said, it was a dramatic increase compared to prior years, and also less funding?
Mr. Chairman, I think over time they've been increasing. Part of that used to be a requirement to have a watershed study done before you could be eligible. That was removed. And just, I think, knowledge of the program is becoming more popular. But yeah, they've increased over time. We have information on which districts have received projects over time as well, costs and so on and so forth, so.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the chairman of the committee. If I understood correctly, the Select Water Committee had cloud seeding in this bill, and then the Senate Ag Committee chose to remove that cloud seeding. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is correct. However, several of your Senate Ag committees sit on Select Water.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman? So in the Select Water Committee, was there fairly broad support for the cloud seeding projects, or was it questionable even at that time? Only because I would think that the Select Water Committee had far more data and input than the Ag Committee would. And so just trying to understand how the Ag Committee came to that decision on the Senate side.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, it was a significant discussion at Select Water as well. And we left it in for the time being, thinking we'd have more time for discussion when we got here.
So Jason, what is your conclusions on the value of the cloud seeding program?
Mr. Chairman, I will agree they're within potentially the margin of error, but there's a lot of assumptions that go into that. The assessment study that we just completed was basically for 1 year of the aerial cloud seeding program. And it looked, or estimated that there was anywhere from, if I'm getting these numbers correct, roughly 5,000 acre feet to 10,000 acre feet of additional stream flow that resulted from that 1 year's worth of cloud seeding. My question to the folks that did that was it a dry year that, was preceding that? Did a lot of it go to soil moisture and not show up in our models in the stream? So that's a question in my mind, but
what were the answers to those questions?
Well, I think that's a easy place to jump to, that, yeah, a lot of it would have gone to soil moisture, or a portion of it. I can't say a lot necessarily, but.
Hopefully it wasn't last year.
No, it was 2019, 2020, that season, or that winter. And that equated to roughly, on average, we looked at about 7,000 acre feet of additional stream flow was the average that came out of that assessment, which equated to roughly $82 an acre foot. And when you get into agricultural business, depending on what you're growing for crops and what your efficiencies are to get water to your crop, that can be fairly attractive to maybe breaking even. So if you start looking at it on an industrial or municipal type basis, then it's fairly cheap water. So I just don't know that all the Select Water Committee members saw the return on the investment to justify moving forward. Now, our other cloud seeding program in the Colorado River is heavily subsidized by downstream states and downstream users that benefit from that program as well. So Wyoming only has to pay in about 37% of that program, whereas the aerial, we do get a generous contribution from the city of Cheyenne, $50,000, but the majority of that is funded through the state in the aerial program that they chose to remove.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Any other public comment? Seeing none. Okay, we'll close public comment. Committee, any action on the bill? Move the bill do pass. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move on page 50 to delete all of section 5, which is lines 7 through 11, and all of section 6, which is 13 through 17. Again, that's page 50. And if I get a second, I'll explain. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the general fund transfers to account 1. As these projects will be going forward and as the budget has been developed, there should be adequate funding within the budget this year to fund the projects listed without an additional general fund transfer. So that's why I suggest that we not add this additional general fund transfer.
So can you restate the motion so we can follow it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Again, page 50, section 5 and section 6, delete entirely, which would be lines 7 through 11 for section 5 and lines 13 through 17 for section 6, page 50.
Okay, does everyone understand the amendment? Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I'd like to come back to page 49 and remove the language on lines 21 and 22, which are the repealers. If I have a second, I can explain that. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I just think we've had that sunset in there for a while, those small projects. As we see, I'm just not comfortable with the way they come about. We don't see who they are, where they're at, and as you can see, we just keep adding money to them, and so I think we let what they've got going go, and then we can come back next year, I guess, and see if we want to continue it on, but I'd like to see that sunset stay in place.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Any other amendments?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'd like to, if we could go back to page 9. After line 11, I'd like to insert a new D and talk about some redundancy water needs, and if I can get in a second, thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do here is put in $6 million of any previously obligated projects that might be from Water 1, 2, or 3 that might be captured with current unobligated or American Rescue Plan Act funds, and direct that for the purpose of a statewide municipal and rural domestic supply, adding redundancy of domestic water delivery systems. I think that's an area that I'm hearing from municipalities is needing some extra funding, and think that that's not new money. That'd be recapturing that some of that Water 1, 2, and 3 money that we can recapture back with these unobligated ARPA dollars if that all passes.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, have you provided a copy of that to the secretary? So that...
I have one for her.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, questions?
Just for clarification, so the funds being appropriated here are not ARPA funds, but they are funds that get sent back to the state because we've used ARPA funds to take the place of Water 1 development funds in prior grants from last year. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, so you're exactly correct, and you'll recall the conversation when we had a House Appropriations bill on the ARPA dollars, is that when they were putting out some of the ARPA grants, they used some Water 1, 2, or 3 funds and matched them with ARPA dollars. And on some of these unobligated ARPA dollars, one of the ways to get them expended and obligated quickly is to go back and put those water development funds back in the system to be used and not have the strings attached that we would have with ARPA dollars.
And so, Mr. Vice Chair, how did you come up with the $6 million?
Well, looking at the cost, depending on kind of what redundancy is out there, most of that you'll see is if they're pulling out of an existing water source through pump and generator and depending on the size, if they're supplying water to multiple municipalities, that cost can be, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, does everyone understand the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Any other amendments?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I'd like to go to page 52. And on 52, and on line 8, if I can get a second, So this would be reverting a previous appropriation back to the LSRA, which was taken out in 2022. So in line 8, where it says 41-124A2, which shall then add new language, revert to the legislative, the LSRA, period. Then delete the rest of that Senate, the rest of that line, and deletes line 9 through 20, putting that money back in the LSRA.
So this was monies appropriated in 2022?
Correct.
Where's Jason, can you tell us where that money was allocated or in how much of it is spent or unspent?
Mr. Chairman, that money was for the Goshen Irrigation District Tunnels 1 and 2 rehabilitation. At this point in time, none of that funding has been spent, but they are also significantly short of being able to find funding for that rehabilitation of those tunnels, I would say.
Jason, can you tell us how much, so that was supposed to be, I thought that we were supposed to be well on our way by now.
Mr. Chairman, they've made their way through 30% design. They've hired on a construction manager at risk, CMAR contract, to complete the design and put together estimates to complete the construction. So you basically are hiring a contractor to finish the design and come up with the best, most efficient ways, cheapest ways to fix this. So I think they're looking to try to go to construction as early as this fall for at least one tunnel. But again, this is a Wyoming-Nebraska issue, as we know. And the last estimates I've received with inflation and contingencies and those different things was $84 million. So roughly half of that would be Wyoming's responsibility, or I should say Goshen Irrigation District's responsibility.
And Mr. Chairman, what obligation does the irrigation district have on this?
Mr. Chairman, can you?
Well, what's the irrigation district commitment to this? We've got 21 million here. Is this a loan?
Mr. Chairman, this is grant.
It's a grant.
The intent was for this to be 100% grant.
And so what obligation do those irrigators have of their own funds?
Mr. Chairman, currently, if that estimate I provided, 84 million, take that, half of that, that's roughly 42 million minus roughly 22 million, puts at about 20 million in round numbers, right? Unless they find other funding.
Okay.
And that's just Wyoming's portion, or Goshen.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So Jason, just so I understand, because I get confused as to, a couple of years ago, we appropriated a significant amount of money to the Goshen Irrigation District out of, I thought, general funds, not ARPA. And is that the same money as what's here, or are there two separate pots of money?
Mr. Chairman, this is the only pot of money. It was appropriated out of the LISRA in 2022.
And so, Jason, on the 30% design, number one, where do the additional funds come from for the new, whoever's contracting to do it, and what does it cost? Do we know?
Mr. Chairman,
To finish the 30%, to get to 100%?
that is fully funded.
Okay.
And that
But how
came
much
through
does it
account
cost?
two. 2.35 million was the portion provided to the Goshen Irrigation District for their 49% of the pre-construction costs.
So the total design costs are what?
I'll say roughly 5 million.
So, Mr. Chairman and Jason, with an anticipation of if we get the ARPA authorization and what we've been provided with is that there's an estimate of around $27 million of water funds that could be reallocated with ARPA dollars. Could those not then be reallocated to this?
Mr. Chairman, Nebraska has taken that approach. And from initial, I guess, information received from them, we think that is a possibility that tunnel project could be eligible for ARPA.
So I want to clarify just a little bit. Okay, that was going to be my second question. We could use unobligated ARPA dollars, similar to what Nebraska's done. But similar to the last amendment that I had where we have these water $1 that now we can come back and recapture. That's going to free up some water $1, or water 1, water 2, and water 3, as I understood from OSLI. Then those could be reallocated to this.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I believe when you worked with OSLI, the funding that we have as match to existing ARPA projects is about $26 million.
Yeah. So, right.
And Jason, in terms of the total cost of the planning and design, since that's completed, can we reallocate ARPA dollars for those costs as well?
Now we're back on Goshen Irrigation District tunnels. Yeah, I suppose that you could replace the 2.35 million that's been spent or will be spent on the pre-construction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other motions? Does everyone understand the motion that's on the floor?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
just so I understand, so this, as a standalone motion, if I understand it right, this defunds the Goshen Irrigation District, and so it just doesn't get built, right? I mean, why is that a good idea, is my question.
So my thought on this was, with these other available water 1 and water 2 dollars coming out that can be freed up, that they could use those to fund the irrigation district, the tunnels, and we could put this money back into the LSRA.
Mr. Chairman. Fair enough, but your motion doesn't do that. Your motion just defunds it, right? You'd have to have a separate second motion or a separate bill or separate something to get that done, right?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, in the previous water construction bill, those dollars, that amount is allocated for the construction. And so that would remain. What this does is simply pull back the LSRA dollars back to LSRA, but it still allows the construction to move forward out of what is water 1, because this is really just a transfer into water 1 and back out. So I think it would still take place.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that you can find that language on page 17 and 18 of the bill.
Go ahead. Senator?
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak to this, the only reason this is even coming before you in the water bill again, because we allocated these funds a couple of years ago, is because we needed to change the authorization to go through the normal water development process. Last session, we had changed it so that SLIB could authorize this, and because they thought they might be ready for construction before we got back into session. The only reason this is before you today is because of the change in authorization and the change in contract. So if we strip this out of this bill, it's like pulling the rug out from under an irrigation district that is depending on this money to reconcile an emergency that currently exists. If you saw the pictures today, you would realize those tunnels have been sheeted with metal. On top of that metal are piles of boards and rocks because they haven't got enough money to continue this project. So in the interest of stability for these irrigators, I would remind you, we're talking about 100,000 acres of farm ground here. So I would encourage you to resist this amendment and utilize those ARPA dollars elsewhere if that's what you intend to do.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one thing to that for the math here. So if you remove the 21,810,000, I believe that's funded out of account 2 on the actual page it's on, which 17, is that what you said? 18. There's only roughly about $5 million in account 2 available for appropriation. So we would not have enough funding in our account to be able to cover the 21,810 if it were removed through LISRA.
Go ahead, Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to be clear, you still have enough to complete your design, right?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. That's already funded.
So I'm curious, how long has it been in design, Jason?
Well, the collapse was in 2019. So I'd say for a couple of years.
So I'm just curious, if we're only 30% through design now, we've got 70% more to go, and yet we think we can begin construction next fall. I mean, is that realistic?
Mr. Chairman, as far as the design goes, they've got their construction manager at risk and under contract right now. Is that accurate, Bill?
Mr. Chairman, could we phone a friend? I think Bill might have more specifics on this. I apologize, had I known this would come up, I definitely would have had all of the information you're requesting.
Please proceed.
Chairman, committee, the irrigation district has recently hired their CMR. So at this point, the progress should be moving along faster than it has been. Because early on, a lot of the work was taking care of NEPA, some of the other things that tend to take quite a bit of time. So at least we're being told that at this point, they should be moving along fairly quickly to complete things and move forward, at least on one of the two tunnels, the worst of the two tunnels, to get it constructed.
So you're thinking that you can start on the first tunnel?
That is the current plan, with my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, further questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
just back to the question that Representative Stith had, and I believe the language on 17 and pages 17 and 18 does authorize it, and so the motion just simply brings those funds back into the LSRA, but water 2 would still be the expending account, and so the money is still available as long as there's money in account 2 to make that expenditure. And so I think this works well.
Mr. Chairman, the only point I'm making is that there's not enough money in account 2 to cover the $21,810,000.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Jason, I think I heard you say there's around 5 million.
Mr. Chairman, that would be for all projects in account 2 that we receive application on next year for.
And then you've got this 21 million set aside and stored where, if it's not in water 2?
Mr. Chairman, that would have come through LISRA. That's the only source of that money.
So it's just the authorization to use LSRA?
Well, it would have been transferred to account 2, but it has not been. I guess this gives the authorization for the commission to expend it.
That makes sense.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, in light of what Jason's told us, you know, and I appreciate that there's a lot of people at risk and a lot of acres out there, but you know, in this session where we're seeing a lot of different people impacted, and we have a propensity to try to reduce funding even though those impacts are significant, I don't know why this should be immune to those types of reductions as well. And so I think what I'll do, Mr. Chairman, is I'll withdraw this amendment and then see if I want to put it further on the floor.
Okay, amendments withdrawn. Any other amendments? Any other amendments? As amended, then, roll call.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative Sherwood?
Aye.
Representative Stitt?
Aye.
Representative Walters?
Aye.
Representative Swanitzer?
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas?
Aye. Okay, next up, Senate File 102.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Jason, you're doing a great job. Thank you. You really are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for hearing Senate File 102 and SJ2. I was hoping that since you gave Chairman Throne the latitude to use her two bills together, these two bills have been moving in tandem together along with Senate File 77. Before Friday, we had conforming amendments so that all of those bills would work together. And so, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to explain SJ2 first and then go into Senate File 102.
It's your floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in our Wyoming Constitution, we have, if you look on page 2 of SJ2, our Constitution says that no distinction shall ever be made by law between resident aliens and citizens as to the possession, taxation, enjoyment, and descent of property. So SJ2 seeks to allow the citizens of the state of Wyoming to vote and decide whether they would like to prohibit foreign adversaries of the United States from owning property in Wyoming. The reason the language as determined by the legislature is contemplated in this is because if we wanted to restrict it to critical infrastructure and military bases, then we would have the ability to do so. However, there is some support for just allowing that to be statewide. Just for your information, the determination of foreign adversaries, as stated in 15.7.4 CFR, the Secretary has determined that the following foreign governments or foreign non-government persons have engaged in a long-term pattern or serious instances of conduct significantly adverse to the national security of the United States or security and safety of the United States persons, and therefore constitute foreign adversaries solely for the purposes of the executive order of this rule or any subsequent rule. These include the People's Republic of China, including Hong Kong, Special Administrative Region China, Republic of Cuba, Islamic Republic of Iran, Democratic People's Republic of Korea or North Korea, Russian Federation, Russia, and Venezuelan politician Nicolas Maduro regime. So that is who we're talking about, and then the Secretary consults with the National Security Strategy of the United States, the Director of National Intelligence Worldwide Threat Assessments of the U.S. Intelligence Community, the 2018 National Cyber Strategy of the United States, and also more reporting from the U.S. Department of Justice and Homeland Security and other relevant sources. If this constitutional amendment were to go through, the citizens would be asked to vote on whether they would like to insert subsection B, foreign adversaries of the United States and prohibited foreign entities as determined by the legislature that pose a threat to national security shall not be entitled to possession, enjoyment, or descent of property, including any interest in real property or real estate, any surface or subsurface, airspace, or mineral interests of the state. When we're talking about this, the reason it came to me is because we are sitting in a very strategic area of our state with F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and I was approached by Nebraska legislators that have found that there are Chinese operatives buying land through cash purchases along the blue line, and the blue line is the connection of the Sentinel missile silos. So our national defense is at stake here, and we're trying to do something about it. As you know, Banner County, Nebraska, Pine Bluffs, Wyoming, and back over to F.E. Warren Air Force Base are areas of critical concern for us and our citizens. And so this is the reason I'm bringing this forward today. There are many in the audience that also know today of our public other impacts that we are facing here in the capital city of Cheyenne and in other areas of our state. This is an issue I have heard repeatedly from our citizens out across the state, and it's of high concern. That is what SJ2 does. In SF 102, it is designed to work with both Senate File 77 and SJ2. SF 102 puts in the ability to relegate this to critical infrastructure.
All right, before you move on, I do have a question here.
Okay,
If we can
go
go
ahead.
back to the resolution, can you
Yes.
just give us some more color about the conversation? The bill essentially is statewide application, but you mentioned that there was some conversation about limiting that to just around critical infrastructure, and I'm wondering if you could elaborate. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood, thank you for that question. That will get into the next bill. They're designed to work together. So the next bill, Senate File 102, will answer your questions. If they don't, we'll go back to this one again. Senate File 102 allows the Department of Homeland Security to designate zones of critical infrastructure and military bases. The radius is 10 miles, which is why the other bill that you amended had contemplated 10 miles because we were lining the two bills up together. That once they identify those critical infrastructure zones, that would be transmitted to the county, and the county assessors would then report any land conveyances that happen in those areas to the Department of Homeland Security. The bill also gives the Attorney General broad subpoena power to be able to investigate who owns
Mr. Chairman.
critical infrastructure.
So Senator Steinmetz, I take
Yes.
it now you're talking about Senate File 102 and not
Yes, I am.
SJ2?
Yes,
Okay,
this is how it feeds into SJ2.
okay.
And why the wording about, as the legislature may prescribe, because there have been questions about why that is in there as determined by the legislature on line 12. So I was just
Mr.
going to
Chairman.
present them together.
Mr. Chairman, so Senator Steinmetz, I take it if we adopted, let's imagine Senate SJ2 survives and were passed into law and got on the ballot, but Senate File 102 failed, then the way SJ2 reads is that just as determined by the legislature at some future legislature, right?
Yes, or you could determine that, that any foreign adversaries are prohibited at this time.
And Mr. Chairman, follow up. So Senator Steinmetz, as you know, I've been concerned about the unintended consequences of both Senate File 102 and SJ2. This Senate Joint Resolution 2 prohibits foreign adversaries and prohibited foreign entities, as determined by the legislature, from possessing property in Wyoming. Is that a fair statement?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Representative Stith.
So, Mr. Chairman, because our foreign adversaries may change in the future, right? So the country of Turkey, for example, and the country of India right now, considered allies right now. Turkey is a member of NATO. But, Turkey has its own political process and sometimes does things that are not in the national interest of the United States. How do we deal with a situation where, say, the country of Turkey and the country of India both become foreign adversaries, which would be possible, and then we've got two trona mines in southwest Wyoming, essentially owned by entities controlled by nationals from Turkey and India? It seems like your constitutional amendment here would require divestiture, it would require a sale of those trona mines, right? Isn't that an implication of what this would do?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stith, the issue before you is not what will happen tomorrow or the next day, it is what is happening today. And right now, our foreign adversaries are here among us. We would have to cross that bridge when we came to it.
Go ahead.
Thank you, but Senator Steinmetz, this language impacts the future. So we, as much as we contemplate that bridge when we cross it, your language in this would impact that now. And so I'd like to go back to Representative Stitt's question. So that would require them to sell that. Is that not accurate?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, this bill doesn't. The next bill would, Senate File 102.
102, but we're talking about them together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, we are. So this Senate Joint Resolution 2 is for the citizens to decide what they would like to have happen and vote on it. Senate File 102 would impact divestiture, but it also restricts it to critical infrastructure and military bases. So within 10 miles, and that could be amended to reflect the other bill that you saw pass through on investigations. And so that's basically the decision you have before you. I don't want to take up a lot more of your time. If you have more questions on either of the bills, I'm glad to answer them. However, I know there is a lot of public comment on both of these bills, or I perceive that there is. I'm very thankful to have had the time to meet with our Department of Homeland Security and the National Guard. They have been very accommodating to try to help us navigate this very complex situation that we find ourselves in. Right now, it would not impact Turkey or India. If they do something horrendous, I'm not sure that would be something we would have to consider at that time. Right now, they are not on the list of foreign adversaries. I don't know where their locations are, if they're located near critical infrastructure or not. That would be another thing that would provide flexibility for the legislature as far as where things are located. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any further questions on the two bills.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time today. I'm wondering, I don't see it, and so if I've missed it, please direct me to the page number, a definition for foreign entities. Does either bill contemplate a definition for what a foreign entity is? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is identified in Senate File 102. It is on page 3, line 17 through line 4 or 5, or page 4 or 5. I think it may go to page 5 through line 9, and that is, it lines it up with 15 CFR 7.4, which is what I read you at the beginning of my presentation. So that is federal designation by the secretary.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm on page 3 of 102, and it talks about the definition of a foreign adversary, but I don't see a definition for a foreign entity.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it is foreign government on the top of page 3, and it is a prohibited foreign party on page 3, line 17.
Further questions? Representative Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator, I have a question kind of on unintended consequences. In my former life, I was a realtor, and as a realtor, we were always required to disclose any information that we would know about any property that we were going to sell. So as we're looking at selling real estate within a 10-mile radius of, I assume, any critical structure, which could be probably any dam, uranium mine, I don't know what would get classified. But my concern is if I'm a buyer, and as I'm sitting down at the closing table, they come up and say, you know what, your information has to be given to the law enforcement, the DCI. I wonder about the valuation of all those areas around the critical infrastructures. Do you see any concern with my thought process there?
Mr. Chairman, it's a policy decision. If we want to protect our critical infrastructure, if you have a better way, an idea of doing it, I'm all ears. It's just a very important issue that we are grappling with, and I'm all ears if you have a better way to do it.
Go ahead.
Senator Steinmetz, the poison pill in this bill for me is the divestiture. And so I understand that you can have, independently, you can't have more than 25% owned by a foreign entity or an aggregate of maybe the three of us who are foreign
Correct.
entities. So you could have 75% that's owned by a legitimate, well, that's the term I'll use, legitimate owners. That 25% has to be divested. It has to be done within 4 months. And then that seems a little bit like takings to me. And then when you get over onto page 9, it talks about if they don't do it on top of page 9, then they're forced into in a court of, let's see, if the court determines the real property of interest is held in violation of the sections, the court shall order that the real property be sold at auction. Then on top of page 9, all the proceeds from the sale of that auction then go to the lien holders in order of priority, and then any remains go to the state? Walk me through how do we justify the state taking that?
Mr. Chairman, it's a policy decision. If you'd like to, where else would you like it to go? If they don't, it's a penalty if they don't divest. Originally, we had it at 8 months. I've been working with the Attorney General from Arkansas with their laws that they had passed. They had 18 months, and they said it was entirely too long. They're finding LLCs 4 and 5 deep with the Chinese Communist Party at the end of those LLC filings and holding land in their state. They passed a law to disallow that and allow for that to be sold. This is how we chose to do it. If you have other ideas, we're here to amend. You're welcome to amend the bill, or we can talk about those ideas. There are others here that have some thoughts on that and why we reduce that to 4 months instead of 8.
Mr. Chairman. So Senator Steinmetz, the 4 months is, when you get talking about $1 billion or 500 million or even $1 million, 4 months being able to get that sold. I mean, you're forcing a fire sale, and that is problematic in my mind. The bigger problem is the takings, that that is forfeited to the state. It reminds me of a conversation that we have had on property tax, where property owners are saying, the state can then, the county can sell my property, and if the revenue from the sale of the property is more than what I owed in taxes, the county keeps it, and that's not fair. And we're doing the same thing here. If you sell, if you force that sale, and then any remaining proceeds, the state's going to take it. I don't know how Venezuela. I don't know how you do that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it's a policy decision.
It is.
I mean, and that is up to our bodies to decide. The Senate passed it out, and it's on your side now. It's a policy decision. It's one you'll have to make. If you want to amend it to 8 months, I'm fine with that. That's what we had before. If you have another way that you think the property should be distributed, I do know that there are people that are being harmed, and we contemplated litigation here, lien holders, other things like that. As far as a foreign entity, I don't believe that they have, if we pass our constitutional amendment and the citizens say they don't want foreign adversaries who want to do harm to our country in our state to own property here, that is a pretty weighty decision. If that is the case, then I don't believe that's a takings, because our law allows for, they're in violation of our law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So then when we go over, if we could, just trying to understand some other concerns that I have on the bill is, how do they inform, how do you inform the person that there's a burden to inform them that so if I'm this foreign entity, how do I know I'm supposed to report that?
Mr. Chairman, there's two ways. There will be a requirement for filing at the Secretary of State's office, and the Secretary of State will be allowed to turn any entity that they suspect over for investigation. But then also, it will be put on the tax bill for everyone going out, so everyone pays property taxes on land. It will go out on the tax notification. Also, this would also apply to leases, because we've found that around our area, in regards to even a specific solar farm that's being proposed, it has been sold, and there is communist ties to that solar farm as well. So, and then there were other solar leases that have been halted in Nebraska because they were around a transfer switch in a critical area in Nebraska, just across the state line from us. So this is a serious issue. If you have other ideas for how we best accomplish this, like I said, I'm all ears. I've done the best I can to try to work with this issue and help out with this. And this is what you have before you today.
Mr. Chairman, one final question, if I may. Where do the fines referred to on page 11, where do the fines go?
Page 11, what line are you on?
Around 15 through 20, where they talk about $5,000.
You know, Mr. Chairman, you've got me on that. I don't know where the fines go. That's a good question, and I can get back to you on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So do you have in your own mind what critical infrastructure means? I mean, that seems to me like it would be all of our highways, all of our power lines, all of our gas lines, any dam, probably our major river streams, probably all of it, major airspace around every city in the town of Wyoming. Are there any other things that I've left off that are probably critical infrastructure?
Mr. Chairman, I believe the Director of Homeland Security is here, and I would
Well, I asked
prefer
you what
she
you
would.
think that definition is.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I would leave that up to them. It's their bailiwick. It's what they do every day to try to keep us safe after 9/11. And so I'm not trying to be prescriptive to them as to what they classify as critical infrastructure. I've left that up to them. In fact, they are the ones that asked for this definition.
So it also includes all public hospitals, all clinics, probably all schools. Those are critical infrastructure.
You would have to ask them.
Okay. It's okay, I don't need to ask you. Okay, we're going to run short of time here, but as quickly as we can, let's run through some public comment. Go ahead, Bill. So
Thank you,
come on
Mr.
up.
Chairman.
Who wants to make public comment?
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman, well, this pretty much covers buying. What about other situations of occupancy, like renting and so forth?
Mr. Chairman, it covers all real property. Let me see if I can find that reference for you. Real property means all interests, it's on page 5. Real property means all interests in real property, including but not limited to fee estate, leasehold interests, easements, rights of way, subsurface interests, airspace interests, and mineral interest. And then we go into the significant interest. The reason for the 25% is because that is Wyoming specific. That's how our corporate laws read now. And then also, that's where you can find it if you want to look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Joe Rubino, I'm the Policy Director and Counsel for the Secretary of State's Office. Secretary Gray is in full support of both Senate File 102 and Senate Joint Resolution 2. to speak a little bit about the implementation of Senate File 102 by our office, beginning on page 9 or, okay, all right, well. Oh, yeah, and Senate File 102 specifically, Mr. Chairman, the registration with our office. So that requires the registration, and that would be accomplished by just a miscellaneous filing through our existing WIO Suite system. So it sounds like you already are familiar with our filing systems, and so, yeah, the Secretary's in full support of both.
Okay, Sean, you want to come up? And anybody else who wants to have public comment? Just kind of line up these chairs. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Max Esdale, and I support SG2 and 102. In fact, if anything, I would argue that these bills don't go far enough in restricting the access and actions of foreign adversaries in our state. I have no financial interest in the outcome of these bills, and I'll limit my remarks to China, as that's my area of expertise. I've been a student of China and their government for nearly 2 decades now. I lived in China for 5 years, studying, working, building businesses. I earned my first master's degree in Chinese language and literature from the University of Edinburgh, and the second master's degree in Chinese political economy and Sino-US relations during a fellowship at the UCSD School of Global Policy and Strategy. So to the point, there is no meaningful separation between any Chinese business and the Chinese government. The capabilities of one are the capabilities of the other. Why? Because in the US, a political party loses power and they get back to fundraising and criticizing their opponents. In an autocracy, when a party loses power, their best case is generally exile, but more commonly ends in imprisonment or swinging in a hangman's noose. So understood in this light, the motivations and actions of the CCP make a lot more sense. They're in a fight for their survival, and they're playing a different game than us. The stakes couldn't be higher for them. And for that reason, their state views everything through the lens of security, by which they mean anything that threatens the stability or hegemony of the CCP and Xi Jinping. Conversely, any means that can be used to protect or further empower the CCP is seen as fair game. This organizing principle is even baked into their system and is seen on their flag. The 4 small stars representing the 4 classes of Chinese people bowing before one large star representing the CCP.
Mr. Chairman.
I think we get your point.
I had 2 minutes, I believe.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the speech, but let me ask a question.
Yes.
So we have, I think presently, in Wyoming, a company that's owned in part or substantially by a Chinese company.
Yes.
That's drilling for oil and gas in Converse County, right? And so if we essentially expropriate them, take away their property interests here in the state, then we have to write a check for that, right?
Correct.
And so it's so 2 questions. One is, you think that it's a good idea for the state of Wyoming to write a check for 10, 20, 30, or $50 million to compensate them for their losses, that's a good idea. And second, that's not acting like Venezuela, who also nationalizes gas companies.
Mr. Chairman, I would point out that not a single square inch of land in China is owned by any American, and reciprocity is the basis of our relationship. If we are to allow them to own land here, then where is our protection of our interests as Americans there? I think we should treat them similarly. If you need to cut a check to get them out of here and protect our interests, I think that makes sense. If they have ownership here of any kind of assets, they're able to use that as leverage. That's not something that I think we should just turn a blind eye to. If it requires paying it off. Yeah.
So if I understand what you're saying, you think that the best way to deal with a communist country is to act like a communist country. Is that your position?
Hardly. I think that, if we are to look at the actions of our adversaries, we cannot pretend that they should not influence how we respond to them.
Okay, let's go over to Pat Murphy.
Let me yield
To Sean? Okay. You bet.
Follow up briefly. I know it's 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we're going to keep this pretty tight to the bills, and then I'll have a little bit of context behind it. I thought Representative Conrad was going to propose an amendment to address the Trona minor issues, and that's with the amendment, constitutional amendment there at B, where it says, and prohibited foreign entities as determined by the legislature. My understanding was we were going to scratch that so that we could use just a very specific foreign adversaries definition, which we have already defined in 102. What we did was worked with the Trona miners, and they felt comfortable that the legislature wasn't going to get convened and say, oh, well, Turkey has attacked Israel, and therefore we are subject to getting divested. No, we said we will just limit to foreign adversaries. So in that case, if Turkey's government does something and we deem them to be a foreign adversary, that makes sense that we would do something about that. That's between Turkey's businesses and Turkey's government. We should be focused on foreign adversaries in the present, and that's their business. So I think by scratching that and prohibited foreign entities as determined by the legislature, that narrows us down to foreign adversaries. So that's the first piece. The second piece is I want to affirm what this gentleman was saying down here. This threat is real. And let me just give two brief examples. I was removed from the Bitcoin mine that we built next to the military base. I have firsthand knowledge of what's going on. One of the things at play is the investors in one of the two Chinese conglomerates there was recently added to the Department of Defense. It's called the 1260H list. This is the blacklist. When you go on this, that means our federal government has said, you're a Chinese military company. So their investors are defined by our government as Chinese military companies. Okay, so we can go into the specifics of why that's the case and deeper levels of the national security risk, but we can look at what happened in North Dakota. There was a corn mill, the Chinese came in, people got together and said, we don't want them next to our Air Force base. We don't think that's a good idea. So the Air Force got involved and they said our boundary of protection is 15 miles. I know there's been talk of 10 and moving that around, but the precedent in North Dakota was to move it to 15. That's what's already happened, and that's what the Air Force was saying, whether it's eavesdropping, espionage, and an assortment of reasons that they decided. Air Force in North Dakota. The last piece is these coincidences that I want us to think about. When the takeover happened at the Bitcoin mine, just next to the Air Force base, at that same time period, we were upgrading our weapon systems at the nuclear missile base. We were changing our code. We were advancing and modifying what we were doing. They showed up at the same time, the takeover. The Chinese spy balloon flew over a month after the guys that ended up taking over the site were there. These may be coincidences. But the last piece I'll add is if, let's say everyone on this committee says, we think those are coincidences, this is all just about a big litigation lawsuit between us and the Chinese. They're suing us for 139 million in a countersuit. Let's just say it's all about litigation and business. That's why I'm really happy this is in front of appropriations, because you understand money and appropriations. It's a Bitcoin mine. This is digital gold. This is the most valuable competitive asset in the world right now. When they're at scale capacity, they're mining 4 Bitcoin a day. Bitcoin is at 67,000 today. It's up 7% the last 24 hours, 60% the last month, 160% in the last 6 months.
Okay, that's time, sir.
I think you can appreciate what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman. You're standing with the Chinese if you vote no on this. That's what you're doing, and I know it, and I see it. Please vote yes and pass this so we can address this security risk. Thank you.
Go ahead, Pat.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Pat Murphy. Sean Murphy is my second son. I'm a 44-year Wyoming trial and appellate counsel. I speak in very strong support of Senate Joint Resolution Number 2 and SF 102. I was here last Friday when the committee amended and passed Senate File 77, and with all respect, Senate File 77 is a paper tiger. It is a report and investigate bill only. It has no enforcement mechanism. It does not apply or affect any of our foreign adversaries who already own Wyoming land adjacent to our military institutions. And it applies only to future purchases of land. SF 102, on the other hand, applies to our foreign adversaries who are here among us. And SF 102 also contains the enforcement mechanism SF 77 lacks. SF 102 has the forced divestiture provision, and divestiture is the needed enforcement that SF 77 lacks. Mr. Chairman, to those who might worry that Wyoming could be sued by foreign adversaries for divestiture of private property near our military institutions, I say this: it won't happen, because the state of Wyoming has sovereign immunity. Our sovereign immunity for the state of Wyoming is the strongest in all of the land. I think all of you know, I know the chairman does, I know Representative Stith knows what sovereign immunity is. The state is the king. It cannot be sued unless it consents to be sued. The state of Wyoming has never consented to be sued by any of our foreign adversaries. And what's so important here is that we need to amend the Constitution, Senate Joint Resolution 2, to allow the divestiture, and that will further protect the state of Wyoming from any possible adversary future lawsuit.
That's time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Murphy, so how do you get around that part on the divestiture where any remaining proceeds, which was owned legally by, even though they're foreign, right? How come the state gets to keep that?
There is, Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, why shouldn't the state get to keep it from our foreign adversaries when they divest?
Well,
I can think of no better entity to have it than the state.
Mr. Chairman?
We're going to move on,
Just,
unless you can get an answer that's going to.
Mr. Murphy, is it your legal opinion that the state of Wyoming can take my house and not compensate me? Is that your legal opinion?
No, Mr. Chairman, it is not my legal opinion. Representative Stiff, it is not my opinion. Are you a foreign adversary? No, you are not a foreign adversary of our country.
Okay, Lori, you're not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Lori Urbakite with the Wyoming Realtors. We're not in support or opposed to this bill. We just have some real basic questions. As you all know, we are required by the Federal Fair Housing Act to not discriminate based on national origin. So we're not going to ask anybody where they're from. It's not going to happen. You can pass whatever bill you want, but we're not going to ask because that we are prohibited from doing that. So then my question is, as Representative Swanser mentioned earlier, we also are required by law to disclose any matter that would affect the title or would affect a person's choices in whether or not they want to purchase that property or not. So do we need to disclose that if you buy within this zone, that you may be investigated by the Department of Homeland Security or the DCI or whoever is going to do that? I checked in with a couple of our experts that teach our continuing ed classes, and they said, yes, you need to disclose that. That is material fact. You must disclose that. So, okay, we can do that. We'll just put a little phrase in our contracts that say, oh, P.S., by the way, you may be investigated by the Department of Homeland Security or the DCI if you purchase this property, if it's in this zone. But then on page 16 of the bill, and I'm talking 102, the lines 22, 23, and continue on to the next page, say the custodian of public records may deny the inspection of designations and dissemination of information regarding critical infrastructure, military installation zones, unless otherwise approved by the Attorney General. Well, if we don't know where they are, how can we disclose it? I mean, I think we need to know. So I would urge you to consider that language. And like I said, we're not speaking for or against. I just want to make sure that our members are protected and that they do the right thing. And so I would ask you to look at that language.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, please identify yourself. And I'm timing you because we're actually 15 minutes late to our meetings, and we've got bills on file going, and so. And if for some point you actually have to come speak again, you can come back tonight if we don't catch you long enough, because we'll be back here tonight. But go ahead, please.
Mr. Speaker, Fred Schlachter, local resident for 50 years, got here in 1972 with the U.S. Air Force. And I'm not a professional like a lot of your speakers here today. I was a working stiff for a lot of years, worked on all of the peacekeeper sites and the majority of the Minuteman sites over the years. I tell people I drove truck and climbed up and down ladders and turned wrenches, okay? But I would speak in support of both of these bills. There's been a lot of stuff in the news about Chinese buying up properties near some of our strategic locations. And there's an old saying, common sense is not so common. I think this is a common sense bill. And I would, or both of these bills, and I would speak in support of them.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Nicholas and members of the committee. My name is Steve Amelia. I'm a resident here of Cheyenne. and I'm in fully support of 104, 102, and I mirror everything that the three gentlemen here have mentioned. I agree with them and with Senator Steinmetz. A question for you is, would you sell me your kitchen, your bathroom, and your bedroom, and your living room? You own the rest of the house, but I would buy it, and I could come into your house anytime I want, do whatever I want, deny you access to your kitchen and bathroom because I own it. I really don't think you would sell me parts of your house where I could do what I want and maybe look around the rest of it. So it goes with our country. We don't sell our country to anybody. We own it ourselves. You own your home. We own our country. To sell it to a foreign adversary for any reason, I would say is incorrect. We could work with them, they could lease, they could rent, but as long as we own it, that would be fine. You might rent to me parts of your house, but you'd have restrictions. So if you're not going to sell me parts of your house to where I can come in and look around and do whatever I want, I don't think we should be selling any parts of our country to anybody.
Okay, thank you for comments. Any other public comment? Please come on up. Vacate those seats if you've already spoken. Anyone else that wants to come up? Welcome, please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and committee, my name's Mary Langford and I represent the County Clerks of Wyoming. It's my honor. I'm going to take you back a little bit. I'm going to take you back to the courthouse. I'm going to take you to the clerk's office, and I'm going to tell you about what they do and how the mechanics of this are of concern to us. County clerks record documents. We make those available after they're recorded to the public. We can report. This bill requires reporting. We could provide that reporting. We would probably need some interoperability to be able to get the reporting to the agencies that needed them at Homeland Security. We've seen some money in some other places that would help with that. That would be appreciated if we could have some money to help with that. We're going to talk, we have another comment about the mapping, and we talked to you about that before. There's a buffer zone anticipated in this mapping. The recording that they will receive will be specific, so that buffer zone needs to be specific, but from the sounds of it, the buffer zone may be the whole state without an issue. So that would be, we would work with Homeland Security on that. The other thing that concerns us also is the map. In this particular bill, it anticipates that the documents would be recorded. They would be reported, those recordings, which there will be lots of them, will be recorded back or reported back to Homeland Security. Then Homeland Security will send us or want us to plot the mapping. We have no ability or knowledge on plotting descriptions, legal descriptions, or do map work. That's outside our bailiwick. We record documents, we make them available to the public. So, and I am concerned also, I don't believe that Homeland Security would particularly want to have their highly sensitive map information available in our county courthouses and available in offices that typically are public information types of offices.
Okay, thank you.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment? Dale, fire away.
Mr. Chairman, Dale Steenbergen, I'm President, CEO of the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce. There's a lot of big things being talked about here, and frankly, I'm just a ranch kid, and they're probably far beyond my understanding. But I would tell you that I am blessed to hang out with military generals a lot. I was in DC hanging out with Chief of Staff of the Air Force last week. And these guys will talk about the safety of this country. And one of the things they say is, the chance of us being taken over as a country from a missile coming over is not very likely. It's going to happen in our communities. And so you got a couple options as you move forward to look at this, but we need your help. Right here in Cheyenne, the Chinese are stretching us pretty good with trying to invest in and around Warren Air Force Base and out in the missile field. So as you move forward with some of these bills, I would just ask that you have to amend it. I get it's hard, but 24 states at least have figured this out, and we can too. we can figure out a way to protect some of our military installations, and we are particularly interested in the military installations, and figure out how to keep us safe in our communities so we don't face this threat in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We have a motion on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, clarification. Are we doing 102 or are we doing?
We'll do Senate File 102 first.
Thank you.
Motion on the bill. Seeing none. Is there a motion on Senate, on the joint resolution, number 2? Seeing none? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, none of us are happy with the various issues involving foreign ownership of land in Wyoming, and it's an important topic. This particular bill is a bridge too far. It's got so many components to it that are takings, that are unconstitutional, that are literally leaving, it's just so broad and so egregious that we don't find it to be reasonable. It's probably a worthwhile interim topic so that this becomes a studied and probably the best committee to do that is this one. But we'll stay tuned, and but thank you all for your consideration.